Welcome to the KZGN News. Today we'll bring you news about the City Council, news on the Measure L Committee, news on the latest presidential races. Are we headed to another budget showdown in Washington? Today's KZGN Talking Points editorial, weather, sports, and much more.
From the Rademacher Hills to Bee Mountain and the mighty Sierras, Ridgecrest to Inyokern and China Lake, this is your news for the Indian Wells Valley with the KZGN News Crew.
Hello, I'm Tom Windick. Thanks for joining us for the news affecting Ridgecrest and the Indian Wells Valley. Our lead story is a notice that the City Council will be having a very important topic on their agenda Wednesday evening. It has to do with the city entering into a legal agreement that will establish the city joining in with the county for the new Groundwater Sustainability Agency. A decision needs to be made to join under either a Joint Powers Agreement, or a JPA, or a Memorandum of Understanding, or an MOU. Both are legal agreements. Kern County legal staff recommends using a JPA versus the MOU. An MOU would be simpler to agree to, but a JPA is ruled by state law in that a JPA is really a governing body with certain powers that a simple MOU would not provide. A JPA would have more power. Additionally, a JPA would fall under the Brown Act in how it conducts business. This is important as this new agency will certainly affect every water user in the valley. The people attending these startup meetings have made it real clear that they want to be involved in the process to form and then move this agency forward. The county, city, and water agencies will be the main players in this new agency. If you'd like to offer comment about this topic, you'll have an opportunity to do so at this meeting. So, this item will be discussed Wednesday evening at City Hall at 6 p.m. Yesterday, the Measure L Committee met at City Hall. The first item was they welcomed new member Nella Van Jeglem. She introduced herself to the group. In a surprise, another resignation was presented. Andy Anderson notified the committee in person that he was resigning due to health concerns. So this is the fourth change in the committee this year. So the council will once again have to appoint another person to fill out the 5-person committee. So if anyone would still like to put in an application to serve on the committee, now would be a good time to contact the city clerk and fill out an application. The application process for these volunteer positions is very simple. One other item they discussed was whether to do an interim report to the people on how the funds were being spent from the measure. They agreed to continue on and do an interim report as they believe it is necessary to make sure the public was informed of how the funds raised by Measure L were being used. That it is important that the people know that the city is spending the funds as promised in the campaign to approve the measure. Funds are being spent on roads and the police department. This measure brings in about $2.5 million per year. When you drive around town, you can see signs erected identifying what roads are being fixed using Measure L funds. And the fund also provides about 13 positions to the police department. Measure L will be up for reapproval in about a year. So an informed public will be a good thing. In news and the latest about presidential polls, we get this new data. Well, yesterday the media spent all day talking about the new Des Moines, Iowa press poll showing Cruz took over the #1 spot from Trump in Iowa. What is interesting is that there were 2 other polls that showed different numbers for Iowa, which no one seemed to refer to. The Quinnipiac poll put Trump at 28% and Cruz at 27%. So in the process of the media desire to show Trump dropping, they didn't refer to the other polls. In New Hampshire, Trump is at 32%, followed way back by Cruz at 14%. This is a 10-point jump. In South Carolina, Trump comes in at 35%, with Carson at 15%, which is a 20% jump. National polls. Yesterday's Monmouth poll has Trump at 41%. In second, we have Cruz at 14%. This is a 27-point jump. In this morning's ABC poll, it shows Trump at 38%, and in second we have Cruz at 15% and Rubio at 12%. This is a 23% jump for Trump. In the Democratic race, Clinton still continues to lead the race with 56%, and Sanders is second with 37%, and O'Malley is at 4%. Tomorrow I'll have a report from the Republican debate that is happening tonight. So are you wondering what's going on in Washington this week? Well, the Congress is once again under the gun to pass a funding bill before the Christmas recess. House Leader Ryan said that the Congress is in a place he doesn't ever want to see it again, under the gun to pass funding legislation right before a holiday. This should have been finalized and voted on a long time ago. And he states that the next round will be done differently. But we are where we are, and we now have to deal with it. There is much division between the Republicans and Democrats on the spending bill. Ryan says there will be things in the bill and things left out of the bill that will affect both sides of the aisle. When he was questioned by reporters whether he thinks he'll get full support from his conservative congressman, he said we'll have to wait and see. There is speculation that the Congress will once again be unable to reach a consensus, and that a spending extension might be the only temporary solution to keep government running through the holidays. And then they'll have to take it up early next year. There isn't much time left before the recess, so swift action is needed. And don't forget, the Senate also has to take up the issue as well, and then it has to go to the President for signature.
I'm Al Huey, along with my co-host normally on Ridgecrest Talk, Robert Ironman. We're coming before you tonight to talk a little bit about what happened at the Water Board meeting, Indian Wells Valley Water Board meeting last night. Both of us had an opportunity to attend. They discussed several issues. We're not going to get into all of those. I guess one of the more significant one was the
I forget the name of it, but the point is that they need to have a situation where they can meet the peak demand at any point in time,
right.
And they don't feel that they're ready to do that for the future. And so they had discussed well 36, which they own, and which is a capped well, and they also discussed a new well, 35, the drilling of which, and they went back and forth this at previous meetings relative to the costs involved and what would be the better approach. They decided to drill a new well, 35, and it was brought up and was a rather contentious issue,
right.
Relative to whether they made the right decision. And of course, Chuck Griffin was on the air with us a while back on Ridgecrest Talk, saying that he felt it was the wrong decision, and that they should have gone with well 36. And in his opinion, their cost analysis was incorrect, and well 36 would actually be cheaper.
Yeah, and it's we've both seen the data on well 36. It's a good performing well. 35 they've yet to drill. The thing about 35 though, it's in amongst what, 3 other wells already
in
that
the same
general
area as 3
so,
other wells. Yes.
You worry about the cone of depression with all those wells drawing at the same area there. So another thing that was discussed, of course, they gave their financial report. It looks like the district's doing okay. They're down in some areas and up in others. It's funny that their revenues are down because you guys aren't using as much water. So,
which they're very grateful for.
Yeah.
They're very thankful at the response of the citizens.
Right. So that was discussed. They're getting ready to. They discussed appointing new board members to new committees. And
Don Carciato was elected as president.
Right. So interesting. One thing that happened that was pretty significant. Well, there were 2 things, but towards the end of the meeting, when they have board members' comments, the president of the board, Mr. Leroy Corlett, was talking directly with board member, or they call him director, Chuck Griffin, with regards to his being on Ridgecrest Talk. And I guess the board policy is that when the board votes on something, it's not the policy for any board member then to speak in opposition to that.
Next interesting point was at the very end, President Corlett was nice enough to allow members of the public to speak again, even though it was well past public comment. And Mr. Bill Manofsky brought up something that was extremely interesting, having to do with the Todd report.
And if you hadn't known about Bill Manofsky, you can go to YouTube and
watch our show with him.
Yeah, we had him on a couple of times.
But a very important aspect that he discovered based upon some commitments from the agriculture people out in Inyokern, is that the Todd report reported a projected usage of 130,000 acre-feet by the farmers, and they have committed to use well less than 20,000 feet. Now, that's at least a 6.5, maybe even as high as 8 if they're down closer to 17,000 acre-feet. And that's a huge difference, and there was an awful lot of emphasis placed upon that projected usage of 130,000 acre-feet. And in fact, the DWR, Department of Water Resources, utilized that information to recategorize this aquifer as in critical overdraft. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. And we want to, Robert and I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Absolutely.
Stay safe. God bless.
Now, stay with us for KZGN's Talking Points editorial when we come back. Thanks for staying with us. Now it's time for the 102nd KZGN News Talking Points editorial. Here's today's topic. Should a whole school system be shut down due to some threat? Well, this morning's news states that the LA School District shut down after receiving an electronic threat of some kind. Early on, they were very vague as to what threat was received. There was no information put out as to any specifics. But in spite of no information being provided, the entire school system was shut down. The second largest school system in the country, serving over 600,000 students. That is a huge number of people being affected by the decision to shut down. School buses that were out already were called back to the parking garages. Officials started telling parents that if they have already taken their kids to school or are on the way to school, to come pick them up. School management and school maintenance people were told to go to work and wait for further instructions. Now, as of the time I'm writing this editorial, we don't know the specifics of the threat, but one has to surmise that it must be a very large and potentially real threat to close down the whole school system. After all, the decision not only affects the children, but the parents' plans for the day as well. Parents may have to stay home from work to now care for their kids. Employers now have to deal with thousands of missing employees that had to stay home with their kids. So whether this decision to close was an overreaction or not is yet to be determined. Politicians everywhere keep saying that we can't live in fear of terrorist attacks. We need to live our lives as always. But as we have seen recently in San Bernardino, a terror attack can come anytime, any place. But I have to wonder what the threat was that closed such a huge school system. Sure, I get it. The authorities just kept saying they received a threat and decided the proper way to deal with it was to keep all the kids at home. It will be interesting to find out how this turns out if a threat turns to be false. I know and agree we need to do everything we can to protect our kids, and I don't disagree with the decision to close the schools. But I have issue with the lack of transparency as to what the threat was. And I'm referring to the initial decision to close the system down. Why didn't officials provide more information as to the nature of the threat and a justification to such a huge decision? They obviously had more information than they were willing to initially put out. Instead, news organizations were running around trying to get more information as to what is going on. And then the speculation started right up. And then you have the reaction to the news of the schools closing. People that live around schools, these people could get concerned if they are in danger. After all, if a school is a target, are they too close to a target? Should people that live close to schools leave their homes? This type of secret decision then leads to a competition between news sources to get the scoop before any other news agency. Speculation as to what the threat is becomes reality. Again, let me be real clear as to the topic of this editorial. My issue is not with the decision to close the schools. My issue is with the lack of justification offered by officials as to why the decision was made. They surely had to have much more credible information to make such a huge decision. Instead, their vagueness and lack of describing the threat led hundreds of thousands of people wondering what is going on. What is the threat? I agree with the philosophy to err on the side of caution, especially when it comes to protecting our kids. But when you decide to shut down a 600,000 plus school system, there surely was more information you could have provided right from the start. To initially parade 4 government officials out to a press conference and just say we are doing this to protect the kids is not enough. For 4 agencies to be on the same page as to the action to take, more information was available and you chose not to put it out to the people. All we initially heard was there was an electronic threat of some kind. The email threat was emailed to several school board members. Well, where was it? What did it say? I'm sure officials will justify their secrecy, but they didn't want the people to overreact. Well, a lack of information can have the same effect. I'm sure a lot more details will come out during the day on Tuesday, but it will be interesting to see and hear the justification to close an entire school system. And I'm sure by the time you see or read this editorial, the details behind the decision will be out. That's why I don't want to focus on the decision in this editorial, just the initial secrecy in what was told to the people when the announcement was made to shut down the schools. Come on, officials, let's be more transparent. In conclusion, protecting our kids is important, but so is transparency. There was more information officials had than they were willing to provide to the people at the time they made the decision. When a decision is made like that, more justification should be provided. I'm Tom Whitnick, and that's what I think. I'd like to know what you think. If you have any comments about this editorial, or would like to discuss or recommend a topic, I'd like to hear from you. Please email them to info@kzgn.net. Now stay tuned for weather and sports when we come back. Thanks for staying with us. Let's go to Lane for the weather.
Thank you, Tom. From the National Weather Service, a developing winter storm will bring heavy snowfall, gusty winds, and hazardous travel conditions from the Intermountain West and Rockies to the High Plains on Tuesday. Winter weather advisories and winter storm watches and warnings are in effect from northeast Nevada to northern Minnesota. Meanwhile, strong winds with gusts up to 50 miles per hour are possible across southern New England. Temperatures across the nation. Carolinas at 69, Georgia at 70, Arkansas at 67, northern Texas at 49, Arizona at 50, and Los Angeles at 57. And for us locally, tonight, clear with a low around 23, south-southwest wind 5 miles per hour. Wednesday, sunny with a high near 50, south-southwest wind 5 miles per hour. Wednesday night, mostly clear with a low around 25, south-southwest wind 5 miles per hour. Thursday, sunny with a high near 54, with a calm wind. Thursday night, mostly clear with a low around 31, with a calm wind. And Friday, sunny with a high near 58, northeast wind 5 miles per hour. And that is your forecast for the IWV. Now back to Tom.
Thanks, Lane. And now here's Tom Heck with sports.
And a very pleasant Tuesday early evening to everyone. NFL Monday Night Football. Last night, the Giants finally get in the win column. They beat Miami 21-14. Let's start again. 3, 2, 1. And a very pleasant Tuesday early evening to everyone. Let's start with NFL football. Monday night, the Giants 31, Miami 24. The Giants have lost 3 games this year in overtime. 4 of their 6 losses have been in the last 2 minutes of a game. Finally, they hang on, they put away Miami, and the Giants are in the thick of the playoffs in that poor NFC East. We'll look at the standings here tomorrow in the NFC. In the AFC East, the Patriots right now have locked a playoff spot. The Jets, the New York Jets, have won now 4 games in a row. They're 8-5, and they look to probably be in the hunt for a wild card with the Steelers, who are 8-5. And believe it or not, the Jaguars, who are 5-8, who have never been in the playoffs in this decade anyway, they are tied right now, or I should say 1 game back of the Colts and the Texans in that South Division of the AFC. The Colts and Texans, who both lost on Sunday, are 6 wins and 7 losses. And the Jaguars, who just beat up the Colts 51-18 on Sunday, are 5-8. That means they are one game out of the playoff hunt. Somebody's going to be backing in to the playoffs from that division. Very interesting. All right, let's switch over to the local round ball. Tonight at Emmanuel Christian, it'll be Lucerne Valley against IMCS. That'll be at their home court at Kerr McGee. The girls play at 5 and the boys at 6:30. Again, that's IMCS and Lucerne Valley tonight. All right, in the NBA last night, Portland beat New Orleans. Denver over Houston, San Antonio beats Utah, Dallas over Phoenix. The 76ers lose again. They're 1 win in 25 losses. The only win was over who? The Lakers, who were 3-21. All right, let's talk about Memphis and Orlando. They also win last night. Everybody in that Eastern Division this year is better. I think Orlando might be the most improved team in the East. The Heat beat the Hawks. The Heat are improved this year. And the Atlanta Hawks are 2 games over 500 after a very good start. All right, the Milwaukee Bucks, who beat the Warriors on Sunday in Milwaukee, that stopped a 24-game win streak. The Bucks are in LA tonight to play the Lakers. The Lakers have lost 5 games straight. They're 3 wins and 21 losses. Their worst start in recent memory, even worse than last year. All right, let's take a look at the Atlantic Division real quick. Atlanta, the Raptors and Celtics. In the Central, the Cavaliers, the Bulls, Pacers, and then the Pistons. That's got to be the most improved division in the NBA. The Bulls 14-8, Pacers, and the Pistons all over 500. Pistons haven't been over 500 this late in the year in 6 years. In the Southeast, the Hornets, the Heat, Magic, and the Pistons. All right. Let's take a look real quick at the girls basketball team from Burroughs High School. Off to a great start. Laura Larson in her second year as a head coach. She was an assistant there for 5 years. They're currently 6-1. They played Riverside Prep last night in Victorville. That's where the school is, and they won that game 72-17. They beat Palmdale last week and Tehachapi, and they will not play again until January 4th against Lancaster here at Burroughs High School. Great junior high basketball over the weekend. Hope you were there and watched it. Congratulations to Monroe 7th grade girls team. They went undefeated in that tournament. They travel to Bakersfield this weekend to play in an 8-team tournament there. That's your sports for this Tuesday early evening. I'm Tom Heck for KZGN.
So that's the news for today. Also, KZGN-TV know you have a choice in what you watch for your news. We all thank you for choosing KZGN-TV, Ridgecrest's only locally owned community TV station. Stay tuned for Ridgecrest Talk coming up next.